Ellen, thank you so much for being with us today on Wake the F Up podcast, part of a series of materials that's is aiming to being shared with people, and so we can share a bit some, I wouldn't call it wisdom, but at least some tips around the world and how we can grow personally, how we can grow spiritually, and make this world a better place, I suppose. So thank you for being here with us. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. I'm
Yeah,
always honored to be able to speak with people on topics like
good.
this. This is
That's
where
great.
true to my heart.
Great. So Ellen Edmondson. So who is? Let's start with an easy question at the beginning. Who is Ellen? So if you have to, you are an author, right? An author of the. You wrote, I suppose, maybe one or many books. At least one. I know one for my so far, right?
A Place of Love and Light, and the
Okay.
subtitle is Journey Back to Compassion, Authenticity, and Making a Positive Contribution to the World.
Great. Who is Ellen? If you have to write a book about yourself and also biography. Um, so when you were born till now, what happened in between? What are the big milestones that just shaped your journey in a sense, right? So
Okay.
we can also maybe dig deeper into one or many milestones of your path, right?
Okay. Well, I love this because I think everybody has such an interesting story to share. And so
Yes.
I'll try to give you mine in a nutshell because I think it has been pretty interesting is what has gotten me here and what has gotten me led me to write this book.
Mhm.
I am, like you said, I'm an author, but I'm also an intuitive. I'm a medium. I'm a coach, and
Okay.
I do something called spirit art. I'm a spirit artist as well, and I'll explain all of that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to know more about that.
I'll explain kind of my journey to it. It's intuitive art, but I'll explain my journey to it. Try and keep it brief for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
But ever since I was I came up in a large family, one of 8 children.
Mhm.
My background is military background, and traveled around with my dad and my mom in the military. So it was just a really disciplined upbringing, but also very, I came up Catholic, so very religious oriented in my younger years. But as time, I went to college, went through school, went to college,
Mhm.
the whole thing, following what I thought was my path of what was going to be best for me, I ended up going into the business world. But even with going
Yeah.
into the business world, I always was more of a creative spirit and
Mhm.
more of an intuitive and just always felt called to things that were spiritual, even from a young age. Even I always remember that back from 8 years
Yeah.
old. But I went into the business world. But I realized after going into the business world, I got an undergraduate degree from college
Mhm.
in finance, and I got a master's degree in management. And I thought that was my path. So I spent 16 years working in the federal government for the US, United States federal government, one of the
16 years.
agencies.
That's a long
16
time.
years. It is a long time. And
A long
and
time.
what was very interesting is I climbed the corporate, the business ladder pretty quickly. So
Mhm.
came in as a what they call like a grade scale 5, which is lower down the government ladder.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
within 14 years, I worked myself up to a senior executive position.
Not bad.
But the whole time I was doing that, it felt good and I was accomplishing. And the one thing that I always had was good instincts. So I was very intuitive. And my intuition was really strong. And I could make connections and put pictures together and strategies together that other people didn't always see. And people would say, you called that 3 weeks ago, or you said that 3 months ago, and it's now happening. And
Mm.
so I just could connect into things in a way that I just called it having good gut instincts. But I
Good
realize now,
intuition. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, it was very strong intuition. And I didn't have that languaging for it then. It was just, but it was just came to me. I just knew things. I could make connections. And so it helped me propel up the ladder pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
by the time I had put my 16 years in, I just felt more and more like this wasn't what I was meant to do. Wasn't the meaningful kind of work that I wanted to do. I mean, I did a lot. I managed a lot of money, helped a lot of organizations, um, worked with the political appointees of the agency at the time. And I accomplished a lot for a young age because I became a senior executive at the age of 36, which was very young.
Yeah.
For the government, it was usually in their 50s that they did that. So I ended
I want
up,
to hear. Sorry, Ellen. When did you know? When did you know that was not the, or when did you start feeling that that was not the path
That was
that you're supposed to continue for forever?
that was when it was at that time when I hit that 16-year mark of putting my time in. I
Yeah.
just felt restless. I just kept saying, "What? There's got to be more. I've hit the top ladder. I'm this young age. What's next? This
Mm,
isn't what I'm feeling for doing forever." So I ended up one day. It just didn't sit well with my soul, and then plus, the administration changes here at the federal government. Things change a lot. The culture changed. It was just time. I just knew it was time for me to leave. So I ended up quitting my job with no other job. I just felt like every day I was going into work and I was like giving away, selling a piece of my soul, and it didn't
yeah.
feel right for me. So I just quit. And when I quit, I didn't have anything else to go to, and that was a big, big step for me. Um, and I said, I'm going to make this leap of faith, and I'm going to trust that everything will work out. Long story short, I ended up getting married because I had worked so much. I hadn't, done my personal life and hadn't gotten married. I got
Mm,
married, and 4 years into being married, we finally had a child, our son. And after we had him, it was about 3.5 months later, my mother passed away. And my
okay.
mother was like my best friend. But it was after she passed away, I started having these experiences, these mystical experiences
Mm,
that I couldn't explain or didn't really understand. Um, and so that led me on a path, especially after I left my job. I went into soul searching, like, what was my next? What was I being called to? And I just knew it was like more of a spiritual path that I was going
mm,
to be on. But by the time I had, and still trying to figure that out, by the time my mother passed away, I started having these mystical experiences. And I'd say that was the start of the big part of my spiritual awakening was when she passed away. And I can go into so much, so you're gonna have to tell me how much do you want me
no,
to
I mean, look, just whenever you finish, I have a lot of questions. It's a lot of detail. But
Okay.
so your mother passed away. You started feeling this spiritual connection in a sense, these mystical experiences. Then what? You changed your career totally, or did you just continue? What happened after that? I'm just interested in this part as well.
Right. So I totally had left my career. And when I started having these, so I'm a wife and a mother now at home. I was working with my husband, who's a dentist. So I was working
Mm,
with him at his practice. Um, but I came home to be a full-time mom after my son was born. But after my mother passed, the mystical experiences I started having after she passed away, the toys, the little baby toys in our house would just go off. They would just start making sounds, musical sounds, or the
mm,
lights would flash in the house, or things would just started happening. But because my mother and I were so close, I knew that was just her way of still communicating with me from the other side.
mm,
And I had never had an experience like that before. And I didn't know what to make of it, but I wasn't scared because I knew it was her. It wasn't like it was some weird thing or ghost or something. It was
yeah.
her still reaching out to connect with me to let me know she was still with me. And so that happened for about 8 months of this type of an experience. And I would try to go to sleep at night. I'd see her standing right there. So one night she came to me in a dream and she said, "Ellen, I know I'm scaring you, so I'm going to go." And she said, "But you'll be okay and I'll be around." And after that, the next day I woke up and that night I didn't dream about it, and I never had another dream about her again.
Mm.
But I just always knew that she was around. And so then that led me into starting to do more research and studying about all of this, the mystical side of things, intuitive side of things.
Go back on some details that you mentioned briefly,
Mhm.
because also it's very similar to my childhood, very structured. Very very loving parents, but they also put a lot of structure into your life, right? Just our human nature. Um, and so, do you think that structure is something to be, in which ways can it be broken, or we can go beyond the structure to something more authentic to who we are deep down, right? Beyond the social conditioning and so on, because I think everybody is socially conditioned in a sense, right? Do you think that this is a phase that needs to be questioned, and there should be more, I don't know, education around this topic, or is it more of a everybody has its own path and it's just the way it is and that's it? How do you see that?
Well, I think that everybody has their own path, but for me, I believe in where I've expanded, growing up Catholic, my the way I look at things now is much more spiritual. It's bigger than just a religion. And I think that it's great having the structure there, and having a religion is fine. I think that's great for anybody who, connects into their spirituality through a religion. But
Mm-hmm.
what for me, and I will say, I always just use my personal experience, you have to go with what feels right for you. And I think what happens is when you realize that, the realization I came to with my spiritual awakening is that we're all on a path of finding our way back to our true essence and to what is love. And I believe that's who and what we all are. We are love. And that's the basis of spirituality. Now, whatever religion, whatever practice, that brings community, a sense of community to people.
Yeah.
And if that helps you to connect into your soul in that higher space of being connected to divine love, then
Mm-hmm.
that's the ultimate goal. So if practicing a religion helps you get there, that's great. But the rituals and the dogmas and the things that you learn, don't let yourself be tied just to that. Let yourself expand into, that greater understanding and knowing that it has to take you to that place of like my book says, love
Yes,
and
I
light.
agree.
That expands you.
So it's great. So because I also grew up in a religious background, in a Muslim background in Morocco. And yeah, it's great to have this sense of community. But then it's just sometimes there are a lot of rules that keep you limited. Don't question this. Just don't ask why, because I believe the core of spirituality is asking why, and trying to search and expand yourself to try new things and so on, which is that's at least how I define spirituality, which is basically sort of opposite to what religion is also pushing on us. Like, this is the rules, follow it, don't ask questions, and that's it, right? But how do you define spirituality, Ellen, from your perspective, apart from this very important aspects of love? How do you define spirituality?
And
um,
just the way that you said it, I think you have to question everything. You have to question things. I
mm,
think that you, and that's what I did. I started questioning, like, what really felt right to me, what resonated with me. I do
mm,
think that spirituality is you having the ability to think for yourself and connect into that space of something bigger. I think religions is they can help you to have a vehicle if it helps you to connect, but doesn't tell you how to think. If that's what you
mm,
need, that community space
yeah.
for it. But you have to know that spirituality, it's to me, it's such an individual, personal thing of
Mm,
of you being authentic and true to yourself, but walking that path of love at the same time. And that path, that authentic path for every person is different.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
truly different. But if you can keep yourself connected and tied into that into your soul, deepen that connection with your soul and that light and that
Mhm.
authenticity, that's your place that I feel you connect in with your spirituality and your higher source. And it's not living limited and being told how to think or how to live or how to be, but knowing what is right and coming from that, I say that moral inner compass of knowing what connects you back to your path, your authenticity, to love, and what you can
Yes.
positively
Yeah.
contribute to the world.
It's okay. I think we are more or less online on this aspect. I like to ask also as well, a very in this in the same context. I like to ask some very profound questions.
Sure.
What, Ellen? What is God for you now? Because there is obviously the understanding of God from a religious perspective. This is something, at least from the Abrahamic religions, right? The Christianism, Islam, and Judaism. God is something that we need to respect. He's bigger than anything. He's is everywhere, and he's in the skies or somewhere, and we need to respect him or respect it. How? What is God, Ellen?
That's a big question, and I like that question. For me, and I can explain for me, God, I know growing up in religion, I felt like God was this person, not person, but like this, in the sky
Yeah.
outside, this directing and controlling everything. I look at the essence of God it's just like the universal life force that flows through. It's in everything in every single one of us. I feel we're all pieces of that divine spark. We're all pieces of that divine energy That is, to me, love, divine love, unconditional love. And it resides in every single person. It's what we're made of. It's what we come from. We come into this existence from that energy that is nothing but a loving, guiding, supporting force. And I think that when we start looking at, people look at God in a negative way or think that, God has caused this or blame, it's only because we as people, as humans, have turned our back away from really understanding how we need to show up in the world for
Mm,
ourselves and for each other. The conditioning of the world
okay.
strips away our sense of knowing that God is just it's this loving force that's there within each of us. It's not outside of us, it's in every single person.
Somewhere inside, yeah.
It's around all of us, but we become disconnected from that when we get conditioned by the ways of what we're taught in the world.
Mm, great. Um, talking about conditioning, uh, I like also the part in your story about breaking the ties with the conditioning. So I think it's similar, but I had it at a very young age. I'm a very young, I mean, yeah, relatively young age, 20, 26, 27. Started to feel uncomfortable in the society that I was living in, so in a big city in Paris. Um, what was it like to have this jump from the old, I'll call it the old life, to the new life? How did you manage to do it? Was it stressful? Was it easy? Was it
It was, for me, it was when I made that change. For me, it was when I lost my mother. It
okay?
really made me
Trigger.
shook my world, and I had to look at things differently. But it wasn't easy. It was eye-opening, it was soul-searching, and even when I left my job, besides just my mother, it was like a lot of big change, but it made
Mhm.
me wonder, what is my purpose? I started questioning, why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I meant to contribute? Is this all there is? Those are questions I think everybody gets to at some point in
Yeah.
their lives, and they start questioning those things. And I did a lot of soul searching and like reading, studying. I started after my mother passed. I started meditating. That was a huge thing for me.
Okay.
Was taking time to meditate. And as I got quiet and started meditating, then it was a period of time in January of 2013 where I went through. That was my real like big awakening, where I started having these mystical experiences, where I started doing automatic writing. I started doing channeling,
Mhm.
vocally things. And I know these are concepts that some people are like, this is could if you're not spiritual, it can sound strange. And even if you
Yeah.
are, it's unique mystical experiences. But I had in 9 days, I had all these different things open up for me. And some of that is what led those awakenings, that ability is what led me to write the book. But it was uncomfortable because I had to shift. I was like, how does this align with what I grew up with my religion? That
Yeah.
all these mystical experiences, this isn't something that would necessarily be accepted or understood by religion. But I knew that I was on a different path. And for a while, I was like, whoa, what's going on with me? Is this normal?
Yeah. Were you questioning yourself a bit? Were you thinking maybe you're getting a bit crazy or something like that?
Yes, that's what I was just getting ready to say when this happened. And I was married. I finally started telling my husband about some of this. And I was telling him, I was like, am I going cuckoo berries? What's happening? And he was like, and after I opened up and started showing him some of the abilities that I started having, and he said, you're one of the most logical people I know, because I was a controller in the government. So I did very logic oriented work. So it was
Counting and
practical
numbers. Yeah.
numbers. That was so this stuff. I was like, whoa. But he said, no. He said, let me do some research. So we went and he found an intuitive development class to start working on my intuition and these different mystical skills that I had coming about. And when I went and I talked to the person at the class, and I explained to her everything that was happening, she said, no, she said, sweetie, you're not crazy. You're not losing it. She said, you're gifted. You had this awakening and you're gifted in a different way. And you meant to use it to help put this information out to help the world. And I'll fast forward. That's how this book came about, because I started after those experiences where I had those mystical experiences that were happening. I started hearing in my soul, like just, feeling within myself these messages that were coming. They were inspired messages because I know it's like, these aren't my thoughts. These are other thoughts that are coming, bigger wisdoms, big things. So I started writing down what I
Yeah.
was hearing and feeling. And that's what over 10 years I would write down and post them on my website. I stuck up a website because that reverend, the lady I talked to said, post them for people to hear or to read and hear, make YouTube videos. I mean, so I posted them. But this last year, I pulled them all together in a book to share out with the world on a
Great.
wider audience.
So just guys, you can find the link of the book of Ellen in the description below if you are watching YouTube. So Ellen, I wanna know a bit more about what is it like for people that never had the experience. What is it like a mystical experience or spiritual experience that's very deep? How can you, whether it's getting this intuition or channeling or mediumship, how would you describe it? I don't know. It's hard to put words on these kind of experiences, but how would you describe it in a simple language?
Right. I
And
started,
what's the purpose of it in the first place, right?
I think when I I call it a spiritual awakening. And I feel like when you start tapping into and usually a lot of people, will have it through some kind of traumatic experience or some big change, something that makes you question, why are you here? Why am I experiencing it? What is my purpose? That kind of, you start questioning that. And then when you go into states like meditation, I know people who have these with meditation, with yoga, things that help you to really connect inward to yourself, to your soul. And when I think when you make that deep connection and that understanding of like looking at your bigger purpose, and when you're a sensitive person, you can expand and you start having those mediumship experiences. You can start having channeling. I believe every single person, not believe, I know every single person is intuitive and they have a sense of intuition.
Yeah.
Some people are more sensitive and have a means of being able to tap into an expanded awareness where you can contact, be able to translate information for, invisible, non-physical energies that are around you, because they're all around. All of us have loved ones that are deceased that are around us. Every single person does. And people pick up information from them, whether they realize it or not, in different ways. And that's a
Mhm.
form of, I'd say, like a form of mediumship, a form of connecting in with that the biggerness of life. But I had mediumship experiences. I had channeling with writing, with vocally, coming through my voice. I had it just in 9 days, all of this started happening. I started having automatic writing, started doing that, and it progressed from automatic writing to automatic typing, then to speaking. And then even in the writings that I was getting, it told me that in like 6 months, I'd start drawing for these invisible energies. And that's what led me to the spirit art, where I started doing art I was drawing pictures of faces and started drawing that were just coming to me. I would just start drawing them. And they turned out later, they were people who departed loved ones of folks that had passed over.
So that's artistic writing. It's basically a subconscious sort of or unconscious writing that you are not really conscious of, and then that you discover after you sort of come back, right? Um,
Right. And people can be completely unconscious of it, and some go into like a light altered state where you're writing, but you may not remember. Automatic is writing when energy is coming through you and writing, and you're right. It's totally
yeah,
um, driven by an
depends on
unconscious state. Yeah, totally by an unconscious state. And then you have the kind of writing where you hear or you feel these impressions, and you start writing down what you are receiving. And I've done both. I've
yeah.
got information both ways. But like what you were saying before, all of this did make me question. And you go on, and it's a continual, is this me or is it something greater working through me? And you have
Yeah,
to balance that and challenge that.
I like to make the image or the comparison that I put in my book as well with the cloud. I'm an IT engineer basically. So it's like a cloud. You have the photos are not in your phone; they are in the cloud, but you can access them with a certain stronger connection, in like internet connection, or right. That's how I like to compare it. So there are a lot of things around us, but the more you are aware, the easier to access certain information, right? Than other people, for example.
And I love that. That's a great analogy. And you know, and that goes back to what you were just saying about, I think because the more conditioning you have around you and you think you have to be a certain way or think a certain way, or that's what covers up or makes it harder to connect, like your analogy, like with that cloud. When you have more of expanded awareness and can drop some of that conditioning, you can tap into it easier.
Interesting. Is there, Ellen, some and this is a question that I'm interested in personally as well. Is there some how can I rephrase it in an easier way? Is there a way, or do you have certain practice, certain habits, certain steps to follow to get into these augmented states of consciousness, or altered states of consciousness, or does it just comes naturally at some points, depending on the environment and your state and so on?
Well, I can speak for me. There are ways you can get into meditation. That was my opening when I started
Which kind
meditating.
of meditation, maybe?
You know, it's the thing that's interesting about that, how I got
Mm.
introduced to it was years ago when Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra were offering these 21-day meditation challenges. I don't know if you've heard of those, or they were doing them back years ago for free for people, and Oprah
Okay.
Winfrey. That's when I started meditating. And signed up for those and started doing these 20-minute meditations that they were offering. And I did them, 21 days. And then after I did the first 21 days, I was like, oh, this is good. I like that I'm doing it. But I was doing it to help me to handle grief. And then I had a little 2-year-old, 1, 2-year-old, just as a breakaway, just to kind of recenter. And as I started doing that, I started realizing I was getting into it helped take me to releasing everything from the day and just being. I just was able to get in that space of letting go of the conditioning and just being at peace and finding that center. And that's what opened it for me. So I started meditating, and I still do that even now. I've ever since then, but I do it in different forms. For me, I also now I do walking meditations every morning. It's a part of my practice that I just can change forms of it. So some people can sit and just meditate and just go in the quiet space and I like to also move. I like to be in nature just like where you are. I'm outside every morning
Yeah, that's
in
great. That's
nature. Those to me, nature, meditation, I know people find it through yoga, all of
mm,
those help you to
just be.
just be, to drop that conditioning, create that little bit of space that opens you up just to be. And when you can just be, then you expand your awareness and you can connect to something more.
Now a bit more about, for example, your book. So, a place of love and light. What's the heart of the book? If you not summarize it, but just maybe something that you can share with us here that can about what is the book about, and then maybe some tips that come in the book that we can use in our own lives. I don't know if it's just a journaling. You said it's a collection of different blogs, right?
It's a
Different
collection.
creative writings.
I'm sorry. It's a collection of it's through my 10 years of when this started to when this book was put together and put out.
Mm.
Every week I would have impressions coming to me. So I call it a collection of inspired writings. These messages would come to me and I would just start writing them down and post them. And I would notice through the years that even on this website, if there was some world issue came up or a disaster, I would always see spikes go up on the website that people were looking at these writings. And so they were finding some comfort, encouragement, some peace with what they were seeing. So last year, I was guided, inspired. It was like, it's time to put it together, pull it all together in a book and make it available to the world in that platform in to a wider audience. But it's a book about personal and spiritual growth. Each of these writings is a devotional style book, and it's about a lot of the writings are talking about how to deepen your connection with your soul and how to get into that space of connecting with your spirituality and with divine love. I love
Okay.
the title comes from in the front of the book. It explains there's a writing that came through that's kind of a channeled writing, and it just talks about how we need to get quiet and get still and get in that place where we can connect with that light within us and to our higher source. And that's that place of love and light. That's where we make that connection, where we can embrace our authenticity and compassion and know why we're here and what difference we can make in the world. But it has scriptures and inspirational quotes. And throughout the writings, it has short little different exercises to help you to think about like journaling or questions that it asks to make you open your mind and go a little deeper
Yeah.
into what you need to do and how you need to show up to be your best self and connect to your highest self, and then to connect to the greaterness of life, the biggerness of life. So it's one of those books you don't have to sit. You can sit and read it in one sitting if you want, but it's one of those that each writing is a short devotional style writing. You can pick one writing a day, a week, read it, just kind of sit with it and let it resonate with your soul. And
Yeah.
it's going to help you to expand yourself and your spiritual growth.
I understand. Great. So it sounds very. It's a bit like any. Well, for me, it's like not any, but I mean, there are these self-development books that you can just read and have. Also, it's entertaining, but I understand that it's more of a deeper reflection. So you need to be ready as well to challenge your reality and be to change. It's not just I'm gonna read it and have fun and relax in the metro, right? It's more. So what is the difference between light and love, which comes from the title as well? Do you have any difference between both words or concepts between the light and the love?
Between the two, between the light and the love. The light, love is just, it's that force. Those are the two strongest forces in the universe, light and love. And light to me is the awareness.
Yeah.
It's the expansion, the awareness of understanding how you need to move
The
through
wisdom.
the world, how to show up. It's the wisdom of it all. That's what the light is. The love is how we take that wisdom and we put it into action and service, how we treat ourselves in the best possible way by being authentic, showing up authentically without the conditioning, but showing up and being able to put the best in because when we tap into the best of ourselves, you're tapping into the God spark within.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
God is only good and only brings good into the world. When we tap into that, we bring out the best of ourselves. And when we can see that in others, when you start showing up with that wisdom, you start showing up authentically yourself, you can give grace and forgiveness and kindness, and you can look at your fellow person even when they're struggling or not putting their best self forward, and knowing that we're all on the same journey of becoming, of evolving, of discovering who and how we're meant to be, which is this coming back to that light within, that spark of best self. So that's love is our service and how we show up and the goodness we put out in the world. Light is the wisdom that we bring in. And when you put those two together, that's a powerful combination.
Yes, I agree. Except maybe you just said it in your own way. The part of God is only good and loving. If you combine it with the light, maybe it's just God is everything. It's also the bad. If you understand that the bad is just conditioning and cause and effect, right? In a sense, so
Yeah.
maybe. So yeah, it's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And can I say too, because what you said is absolutely true. Because even with the challenges I don't look at bad. Everything is growth and evolution.
Yeah.
That's all it is because you have to have the contrast to grow. Like you'll never learn how to be courageous if you're not put in challenging situations to show courage. You can't strengthen that muscle or expand if you don't sometimes have the contrast that makes you grow. And so when you can understand that the challenges, what we perceive as challenges, are moments of growth, moments of
Great.
us stepping into our better self. If we look at it that way and we brace that way instead of letting it take us, make us feel bad or take us down, but let us move us forward.
Yes. So my question, I suppose you read some books. I read a lot of books as well about personal growth and spirituality and so on. Different scripture from different philosophies, ancient philosophies, and so on. And there's this books about channeling experiences that I find very interesting. For example, I don't know if you read the raw contact or other similar books like that, where the channeling where the book is like a reflection of a channeling experience, right? Where the author is being sort of speaking, like as you said, creative writing in a sense. So just channeling whatever comes to through an alter like a state that's beyond the consciousness or subconscious sort of state. The person is not there, obviously. That's what it means to be channeled, to be sort of possessed by another energy, and so you just write down what the energy is telling you. And so these books, for example, they talk about certain. They just label this energy. This sort of, let's call it cloud in IT engineering words. So it's this cloud. You give it a name, and it's just full of information, and this information goes through you, and you just spit it out, right? Um, what is your experience here? Because I have my own experience, but we're talking here mostly about your experience. Do you feel like there is a name to give to this energy depending on the day, on the channeling experience, or is it just the same sort of energy and it's just in different shapes and forms?
Well, the way it comes through for me, and I believe people can have different types of experiences with this. The way when all of this first opened up for me, over 10 years ago, and finally made that connection where I understood that I was receiving information from, I was like, somebody's talking to me. It's not my thoughts. This is coming from a higher level of thinking, a higher source. And the name that I was given for the energies that I'm working with is called the Masters. They identified themselves to me as the Masters. And it's just a collective group of high-level wisdoms from, it's a conglomeration of a bunch of folks and bunch of high-level folks, beings of wisdom that are just passing it through to me. And I was told when this opened that the masters were these loving light beings of forces
Mhm.
that are protecting and guiding the earth, like kind of guardians of the earth
Okay,
and helping to information back. And so that the group that I work with is called the Masters.
okay. That's
And that,
from another dimension, I suppose. So yeah,
mhm,
sounds good. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
So it's the same
yeah,
group. It's not different every time. So yeah, okay.
right. But it's a collection of wisdom. So it's different wisdoms that are in there. It's almost like if you'd say it's a group of people or group of and different ones can come through with information. And
Okay.
I know I'm spiritual beings. I know that these were high level folks that were focused on spirituality.
Yeah, okay. I got it a bit better. Sounds. I think for most people it sounds very very strange, but to
Right.
us I feel like we're speaking the same language, but for many people it may sound very strange. But it's reality, right? I mean,
Right. Well,
I
no,
think
I have to
science
say,
will have to catch up in this field, in my opinion. It's still like a bit late, but I don't even know if it will ever catch up. But this is also a very personal, deep experience, right? That's because ultimately a reality is it can't be experienced from objectively speaking. It's a subjective reality, right? So, and you need to see how it works for you or how it doesn't. And
right. And and I look at it as, and people will think it can think it's strange, or but that it goes back to, we all have this ability. Even when people get quiet and they somehow just know, they get these wisdoms dropped into them. They're like, how did I know that? I just knew this, right? This something that feel that something that's guiding them in a certain way. We
gut
all,
feeling.
yeah, we all, that you can look at it in different ways. I look at it as like the voice of God, the voice of, we all have angels. We all have, every person who's walking the face of the earth has, like I said, is connected to ancestors, departed loved ones, grandfather, grandparents, great grandparents. All of
Mm.
these energies are all around. We're all interconnected. And when you have these expansive experiences where you can drop the conditioning and get in that state of being, you can connect with the energies of your, your ancestors, of, everything that's around you, because it's all around us and everything. And so it's people opening their minds to this more. And I always say, if people are concerned about, like, if you say, oh, somebody's hearing something, or there's
Mm.
always can be a mental health component to anything. But that would be if you're being told to hurt or harm or do something negative. That's not from this loving space of helping to
Yeah.
guide you to be of service to the greater
Mm.
good in a positive way. So,
Sounds good.
but these are just unique experiences, and people have had it throughout time. They've had, you go
Yeah,
back.
it's not the first. Yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah, well, and
it's
even
all
if you
over the
go back
place.
to, like, I'm sure, like, the Bible and different religious texts, you've always had some form of, like, oracles or seers or
Mm.
prophets or people like that even back then. It's no different now. You have people like that now. It's just we're conditioned out of thinking that that still exists.
Yeah, and also we had a big break mostly in the Western world with I think with the religion and in general, right? So we saw religion as a very limiting factor to our freedom, and it's just so there's a confusion between spirituality and religion still. So I believe.
Mm,
But anyway, that's I think there are a lot of more conscious people that are trying to speak the word, and that's great for the world, I suppose.
yeah.
But yeah, Ellen, just one few last words about what can people do to get this connection with their spiritual side or their soul or their intuition or their creative thinking. I know you talked about meditation. Do you have any other maybe tips or advice to finish with which finishes on good terms with this podcast? It's a beautiful podcast.
Right. Like we said, I think one of the biggest foundations is meditation. It's anything that gets you in that space of just being. So meditation, yoga is another good
Nature.
thing to do it. Spending time in nature. I think that's so powerful because nature itself is a spiritual experience. I always say you can't get any closer to God and to the essence of
Mm.
life out in nature, and letting the air and the trees and everything bathe your energy field and all of that. I also believe reading spiritual texts and books
Yeah.
help to expand your thinking. And the wisdoms, every single person is a vehicle for inspired thought and divine messages to come through when you're speaking in a way that is uplifting to the people and the masses around you. These thoughts that we get, sometimes people think that it's them. We're always receiving downloads from the greater part of life who's wanting to put these wisdoms out into the world through you. And that's why showing up authentically is important, because everyone has a message and a purpose and a reason for being that's powerful and is helped to meant to move humanity forward in a positive way. But if we show up authentically, we bring our purpose and we bring that mission, that greater part of ourselves to show up and express through us. Is going to help
Yeah,
humanity.
sounds good. Yeah.
So definitely meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, reading spiritual texts, whatever, creative outlets. Even if somebody's an artist, drawing or dance or write, whatever creative way it expresses to you, that connects us into that higher space and letting it use us to bring through inspirations.
Sounds good. Very nice. Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing with us today. Thank you for
Thank you.
your time. And
Thank
yeah, so I will share the link of the book down in the description, and hope maybe to see you someday in the center here, like the FF Center in Barcelona. You are welcome to join. I had the first retreat this weekend, so it was really great. So I'm happy
Oh,
to start this journey of mine as well. So,
that's
yeah.
wonderful. And I have to say, this book is a good book for spiritual connections. This is one that
Sounds
will
the
find
title sounds very catchy to me anyway. So maybe I'll give it a read as well. So it could be very inspiring to everyone.